Aloha mai kako, everyone. Welcome to Not Another White Man's Podcast, where we talk about the intersectionality of race, gender, and religion on random AF topics. Today, we're going to be talking about white supremacy and gender and the philosophy and Karenhood. So let's go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brandee Blocker Anderson, and I am an educator, lawyer, DEI consultant, and the CEO and founder of the Anti-Racism Academy. Get at me for all your DEI needs.
Hey, folks. I'm Haleh. I'm a business and community development director in my town, and I'm an attorney and looking forward to talking about Karenhood today.
Hi, my name is Kendra. I am in my car. And I am also looking forward to talking about Karenhood. I also do things beyond being in a car, but right now I'm giving like dude with sunglasses in a car ranting about something vibes. But I'm going to be ranting about things against Karenhood and not pro Karenhood.
My name is Seanna Pieper-Jordan. I am stationed out of Honolulu, Hawaii. I am our in-house sociologist.
The date is May 25th, 2020. The setting is Central Park. The players are... I almost called her Karen Cooper. The players are Amy Cooper, now known as Central Park Karen, and incidentally, Christian Cooper, no relation, a black bird watcher who's also in Central Park 5. Mr. Cooper asked Amy Cooper to put her dog on a leash, and instead of complying with the park's rules of having your dog on a leash in that area of the park, she instead called the police and lied and said that Mr. Cooper was in fact attacking her and harassing her, which was farthest from the truth. In fact, at the time, she was like strangling her dog, which made the scene all the more horrific as you saw this woman pretend to cry. And this is not the only scene of it, but I think it was one of the major ones that made national media of a white woman weaponizing her whiteness knowingly in order to bring harm to a black man. So behind all this is this larger issue of Black people's not so friendly relationship with the police and just our struggle to be protected by police and not be killed in police encounters. So Amy Cooper knew exactly what she was doing when she pretended to cry and told the 911 operator that to hurry, that a black man was coming after her. And all of this is to provide just a bit of context for just the severity and the seriousness of this issue of the quote unquote Karen. So let me pull up the Urban Dictionary, because I feel like that's clearly like
that is
the source.
Yeah, that's the voice of people.
Yeah, where did it come from?
Well, okay. So according to Urban Dictionary, and then we can go to Wikipedia, but according to Urban Dictionary, Karen is a middle-aged woman, typically blonde, and makes solutions to other people's problems as an inconvenience to her, although she isn't even remotely affected. So I would say this is the offensive Karen. In the case of what we saw with Amy Cooper, it was more of the defensive Karen, which has a darker, longer history that goes all the way back to slavery. And the postbellum South of where lynchings of Black men and claims of sexual violence against white women is being a major reason given for why so many Black men were lynched. This idea, even going back to the pivotal film, The Birth of a Nation, which was, it came out, I want to say in 1915, and it was credited as being the film that revived the Ku Klux Klan. It is still like known in like film classes across the country as being like a just key film in cinema. But basically the film depicts what happened in the South right after the Union Army pulled out of the South after Reconstruction. And so you see all these white actors in blackface, but portraying the Black members of Congress who were able to take up these like state assemblies after Reconstruction or during Reconstruction, because the Northern Army was providing that protection to it actually allow for Black people to hold office in these places. So in the film, you have these like Black, governments being expelled. And then key to the story is this Black man who is like set on like raping this white woman to the point where he chased her off a cliff. And so this film was used as a tool of propaganda to get white people to join the Ku Klux Klan. So you have this, like, this was happening in the early 20th century, this film, but it's, harkening back to this much longer history. And then fast forward all the way to 2021, we see still the ways in which white women are very much aware of how their whiteness and their womanhood is or can be used as a weapon against Black people. So, Seanna, what made you decide that we should talk about this?
Well, okay. First of all, can we watch the clip so I can have a visceral reaction to it?
Please stop. Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Can you hear now?
Please don't come close to me.
Yeah.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
When
me.
I'm taking pictures, calling the cops.
Please call the cops.
Look at that poor dog.
Please call the cops.
I'm going to tell them there's an African American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm in the ramble, and there is a man, African American, who has a bicycle helmet. He's recording me and threatening me and my dog. There is an African American man, I'm in second ward. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog. And my... I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the ramble. I don't know.
Thank you.
That was a defensive Karen. This is an offensive Karen. This one was crazy too.
Please move, ma'am.
I can. Do you live here?
I'll ask that question. Excuse me.
I'm
Stop
sorry.
touching me.
The keypad is right there.
I understand that, ma'am. But
You can film me. That's
I
fine.
understand that, but you're blocking me.
Into my building.
Okay, and
Okay.
it's my building as well, so I need you to get out my way.
Okay, what unit?
I don't need to say that information. So excuse me, ma'am.
I'm uncomfortable.
Excuse me. Okay, you can be uncomfortable. That's your discretion. You're uncomfortable because you're you. I need you to move out my way, please.
No,
Ma'am, please stop touching me.
I'm not touching
You
you.
just was previously.
I'm not touching you at all.
So I'm going to step in.
I'm not touching you, and I'm not in any way doing anything outside of letting my dog go to the
Okay,
bathroom.
I live here and you're blocking the door.
What unit?
I don't need to tell you that. What unit do you live in?
307.
Okay, great. I'm on the 4th floor. Excuse me.
No. You don't have a key fob. You are... No.
No. No.
If you have that, then okay.
No, you're not security. You're not the property manager. You're not
No,
Mike
but I
Herman.
live here.
Okay, and I live here too. You're not Mike Herman. You're not Rick.
I don't like the fact you have your phone in my face.
Okay, I don't like the fact that you're blocking me for where I paid.
All
So
I'm
live it.
asking is what unit?
But you're not. I don't need to tell you that information, ma'am.
If you want to come into my building.
It's not your building. You're not the owner.
Oh, shit.
To pay rent.
Sir, you walked up on a street.
Yes,
that
yes,
has-
and I've already buzzed in. I've already
You
used
did
my-
not.
Okay, no, it does not even matter. Can you
Can
get out
you-
my way?
No, can you show me the key
I
fob
don't
into
get,
this
I'm
building?
not showing you anything. And the second, ma'am, I'm about to walk through where I live at. So,
No.
okay.
Can you show me the key fob into this? No.
Excuse me.
No.
What?
Are you kidding me? Wow.
Call the police, whatever you want to do.
Where are you going? Do you have a key fob that looks like this? You can film all you want. I'm not being rude. I'm not being disrespectful. You walked into a building that I was taking my dog out and pushed your way in.
That is not what happened.
No.
That does doesn't seem so crazy. Like, did he have the key fob? Did he like walk in with the key fob?
Okay. Who are you going out to the fourth floor to see?
What?
She's like literally following him.
I mean, that's pretty gutsy of her. If you're actually
Look at
afraid
her
that
face.
a stranger is
No,
That's
there,
the
you're gonna
thing. That's the
wanna
thing.
walk
She's not
in.
afraid.
If you're
She's
actually
not afraid.
afraid
She's not
that he's a
afraid.
stranger, you would like
No,
stand
she's not
back.
afraid.
You wouldn't follow. You would be like, "Oh my God, I don't know what this is. I'm
No,
scared."
she's not afraid because she knows she's protected.
Friends.
What happens after? Does it like?
And
Does
why
she follow
we're
him all the way
here.
to his door?
Yes.
And if you do, then I'd like to meet you because you're a neighbor. And
You're gonna start off on a good note. I don't know dealing.
I get as a woman being afraid, but like, I'm afraid. I'm not following the guy.
She's not. It's not about her fear. It's about control. She didn't even allow. Like, it maybe if she hadn't been blocking the door, he would have had a chance to use his key fob. But the reality is that when you go home, you don't get accosted by people asking you to prove that you live there.
What happens next? Oh my God, I'm so scared.
Yeah, this is actually terrifying. I am scared of this white woman. I'm like, never gonna talk to a white woman again.
That is so that.
As a record, I just want to say hi.
Ma'am,
What is your name?
Ma'am, you just no. Have a good night, ma'am. Don't ever do that again. You look pretty stupid on video. Have a nice night. And my name is Mr. Tolls. Thank you.
What does she do? Oh my
Look for
God.
this guy. He's kept his cool and calm the whole time.
Well, because
Well,
he
'cause
had
he
to.
knows.
What?
He knows.
But what choice would he have had if he had freaked out on her? Like he would have been within his right. He would have been seen as the aggressor, even though she barricaded him from entering his own, like where he lived. She gave him the third degree. And then of course there was Soho Karen, the woman who tackled the 14-year-old boy for
Can you watch that one?
That was insane. That
wanna
was
watch that.
crazy.
I haven't
That
seen
poor
that one.
kid. Oh God. you're
Okay,
not gonna
first of
believe
all,
this
she
one, Seanna.
followed him
So
to
actually,
his house because she was not afraid. She was
Right,
not
this-
afraid that whole time. She's holding her
Exactly.
phone in her hand. So
Right.
she knows that she's protected no matter what. All she has to do is scream and everybody will rush to her aid.
That was my issue with this one, is that I could understand, like, you're living in an apartment building, you don't know who the other people are. Oh, show me that you live here, right? I can get that piece of it.
How though? If you're afraid, if you're concerned that someone might be a threat, confronting them is never what you do.
Well, right.
That's
That
never what anybody would ever recommend that you do. If you're afraid, then
get out.
Get out. And then the question, why are you afraid? Because he's black? Like,
And
what
it's
was he doing besides going home?
Yeah, it's probably because he's black. If it was another white woman who did the same exact thing, she would not have been concerned.
Oh, 100%.
So-
But what if it was a white man? You think she would have done the same to another?
She
white
probably
man?
also
No,
would
of
have
course
been
not.
What if he was
unless,
what if he was an ugly white man?
Then
Like, if he was a good looking,
but
like, I'm just right.
I
don't
just
trust
it was
white men.
totally racially motivated.
It's like a
it was
power
okay,
control thing where you have the guts to confront someone, but like that,
It's not guts. She feels fine. She feels safe. Like, she doesn't care. She knows she's protected.
Right. She was not, at the end of the day, she really wasn't worried that this was a guy who wasn't where he should be. Otherwise, she wouldn't have followed him all the way up. I would like to have half the confidence that some of these women have. Like, I don't think I could tackle anyone, big, small, man, woman, kid. Like, where do they get off having this like sense of?
They're insane. That's what it is.
It's like the fact that they are white. That is like 95% of it. And
You
maybe,
really
like,
think so? You don't think that like they're slightly off balance too? Because what do you,
That
like,
too.
I just think women have like this issue. Like, we try and teach our girls and women to like take self-defense classes and be strong and like walk with like your head high. But who would attack someone? Like, what women would go after anyone if you're in your right mind?
That's on my phone.
Show me. No.
You don't have to explain nothing to her.
The case off. That's mine. Literally, get it back.
Take the case off. That's mine.
One iPhone made in the world?
No. Okay, then show me the.
No, get me the light over there. That's on your background. You better go use find my iPhone. Go do that.
Find my iPhone is on.
Can't-
On that right now.
No, you can't. No, I'm in the address of the hotel. I don't care.
He will
This is
right
my
now.
son. Hey, did you see me just come downstairs? I'm trying to help. No, but you're not helping. I am. What you're being is disrespectful. No, I'm trying to settle the situation. My son.
Oh, is it frozen?
No.
Yeah, the video's frozen.
Okay, hold on.
No, he's not leaving. Show me the proof.
I mean, at this point, you really can't see much of anything because this isn't.
Yeah, it's going.
It's just the conversation is ridiculous. Why it escalates to these levels?
We have what you see two black people.
No, I'm not letting him walk away with my phone.
Wait, get on.
No, please get my phone back. I cannot. Look at my phone.
Get your phone.
So that was Soho, Karen.
It's just so crazy, their actions. Like, you got to be like, would a well-balanced, healthy person do this? Or it's like,
yeah, but you can't. There's a lot of people who have mental illnesses who don't act like this, so you can't like blame that. It's like a mixture of like racism and entitlement, and you have to realize, like, okay, so this goes back to a history where literally, so like the scene is like August 1955. Emmett Till is like visiting his family down in Money, Mississippi. He's from Chicago, so you know he's not fully aware of all the social mores of the South. He's a black boy. He's like, what, 12 years old or something. Incidentally, this is the year like right before Brown is supposed to go in effect. So some people think that Emmett Till was like a larger, statement to like black kids who thought they were going to, integrate schools and be with white kids. But anyway, Emmett Till and his family, they stop by a local convenience store, and there is, some dispute as to exactly what happened. Years later, the woman who's at issue in this admits to lying about all of this. But essentially, Emmett is accused of, they said he whistled at her, and I feel like they said he did something else spicy too.
Whatever they accused him of doing, he did not do.
He did not do. So, I mean, not that y'all want to see this, but like it's not a great picture, but this was like front page news. And I just wonder, like, when things like this happen and when like we get these messages, like how long like does the shock last? How long do people care before? And when I say people, like, of course, like black people never stop caring, because this is like, Emmett Till could be my son. But yeah, separate question. Sorry.
I don't think the shock lasts long, right? And I think that even if you're a black person, to a certain extent, the shock is not the same day in and day out, I don't think, because if you're focused on raising like your child and protecting your child, as so many parents want to do, you do try and create this bubble where you want to keep your kid aware.
Yeah,
I could imagine you don't talk about it every single day of every moment, right? So like it's always there, and in our
hold on a second.
Shock value always goes away after you hear the news, you mourn, and you're horrifically upset. And then it kind of goes away, which is why I think the benefit of the kind of work that we do
that's for people who are not black, has that luxury of having a bubble.
No,
like you can't say that you're protect. So the thing is maybe they don't know that they don't see the exact pictures, but like a black parent. So I mean, you can't speak for black people. I can't speak for black people, but the parent has to live with that for a fact, because they have to raise their children, and their children are in danger. This Emmett Till was 12 years old. 12 years old.
I get it. I'm just saying.
So they don't have the luxury to be in a bubble. I'm just saying they don't have a luxury to be in a bubble.
I think like the human psyche is like, as you're raising your family and your kids, is you sometimes try and underplay things just as a survival mechanism, which is why I think the work that we do with this podcast and educating of children is important, because then like it allows us not, because you can't exist on that kind of an emotional pain level day in and day out. So
but black people do, though. That's the thing. That's why we die.
People do.
That's
But,
why
you
no,
can't
like,
say
but like
that.
no, but like honestly though, even when you account for like class, like black people, like rich black people still die faster than like rich white people.
No, I'm
And
not
it's because like
saying.
the stress of racism is an ever constant thing. Like even like there's no escaping it ever. And of course, like that's not your constant thought all the time. But I will say that it's something that is always kind of there. Just in the way I feel like it's similar, like how like Jewish people probably raise their kids. It's like,
Well,
you know,
that's exactly
it's
what
like,
I'm
yeah,
thinking of. Yeah, I
you
think about
know.
anti-Semitism, and I'm really very careful how much I say to my kids, and when
Yeah,
I
but
say
what do you
it.
teach them about the Holocaust?
So you start
I
pretty
think we've had
young.
this. Right.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
we
I'm
start
just
pretty
saying.
young. All I'm saying is that just from like as a parent perspective, and that is how I was thinking about it in my head, is like anti-Semitism, and there's stuff going on all the time. Like especially now, anti-Semitism is significantly spiked. So there's not a day that goes by that something hasn't happened to someone in this country, which sounds like crazy, but I think that just like from a parenting perspective, you can't maintain that high all the time. So I think that in the
But
different
they
ways of
do
coping.
have to maintain it all the
No,
time. They
but what I'm saying,
do.
wait, but let me finish talking. What I'm saying is like that day of mourning cannot exist the same way every day because then it can't become productive.
Okay,
And
but
so,
let's talk
let
about.
me just finish. So what I think is when we do the kind of work we're doing here, it's our way of like keeping it alive and keeping it moving. So otherwise, I think people like the minute there's like 3 days of quiet, you forget about it on that 3 days of quiet because you're like, oh, please, just God, give me a little bit of a break. But the reality is you can never forget about it. So I'm just
how
talking
old
about
was
an
that
emotional
little
thing.
kid? How old was that little kid who was outside in a park with a water gun and
He
the
was
police
12.
come and he was 12 years old? I thought there was like, yeah, he had a water gun.
He was
And the
12. His name
police
was Jameer Rice, and he was 12 years old. And it wasn't a water gun, but it was a toy gun. And he was shot within 2 seconds of the police arriving on the scene.
So when your child was 12 years old, Haleh, were you afraid that a cop was going to show up and kill him?
I'm afraid when my child is young,
So,
where they
I
go.
mean,
No, I put limits on where my children go and who they interact with because I am afraid of like things that happen to them.
But this kid's
But
at the
what I'm saying
playground,
to
like
you,
sitting on the
but
swings when
I
all this
get it.
happened.
But what I'm saying is that I think that the immediate, I'm just talking like human psychology, right? Like that immediate shock thing has to be tempered so that we could do the work. And it only like people temper it themselves because they need to go out and like have an ice cream, which is why like people laugh at a funeral. I'm not saying that the
but the
gravity and the
father and
intensity
the
of it
son
doesn't
on
go
the
away.
Soho, the father and the son in the Soho were out in public. That child was out in public. They
Well,
were
it's
doing nothing.
inexcusable.
They were in a space.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that you asked, like, is the shock factor any lower? And I'm just saying that what happens is that in order for people to survive,
Yeah.
we say to ourselves, it's not a big deal, when in reality it is, which is why we do this kind of work. So we keep it moving.
I honestly
that's
don't
all.
understand your point right now. Like, what's your point? Is your
Okay.
point to say we can't watch these videos or talk about these
No,
issues every single day?
No, I'm saying that we do and we have to. Brandee asked, like, do you think that people feel that same intense
Yeah, I was
emotional
more so
shock?
thinking about white
And I'm
people
just
because
saying,
I don't because I disagree with you. I think that black people always feel it. It's like we carry it, we make it seem light, but we always carry it. And you know, and people are able to insulate themselves, or so they think, to, you know, some extent. But you know, Botham Jean was in his home when that white off-duty police officer came in and shot him. Ahmaud Arbery was jogging through, I'm sure, a pretty nice suburban, predominantly white area when he was shot and killed. Similarly with Trayvon Martin, his family lived in a gated community, like around white folks, when he got murdered.
Yep.
So like there's nowhere in society, there's no level you can reach as a black person wherever like racism turns off. Maybe if you like live in like a predominantly or all black country, like in the Caribbean or in Africa, where like, you know that like the police, when they pull you over, are not gonna like murder you most likely, or, you know, like, but otherwise it's a constant.
Yeah, I
It
don't want
is.
to be like misunderstood. I'm not saying that it's not a constant and it's not something that is constantly on the mind.
No,
I
I
was
mean,
just saying
Haleh,
that,
you
like,
don't,
yeah.
you've never had this experience. I mean, I think maybe you just like, I don't think people
I don't
realize
know.
who,
Look,
no, like, I think,
look, here's
okay,
the
so
thing.
it's not the same. It's not the same.
I'm not analogizing it. It's like, I even think to myself, like when I was in Iran and had to come out and it was like the start of a revolution and a war, right? And even like in that setting, like even in war settings, people like take a step back to breathe. And that's all I'm saying is that I do think that people take a step back to breathe. But what I wanted to say is that this is not something that we can keep off of our radar, which is why we do these kinds of conversations, which is why we teach in schools, because I think it's natural for people to like try and like take a breather. And I don't think this is something that we should take off of our radar. So I was just simply talking about it in that level. And I certainly for white folks, I agree. People who it's not an immediate threat to, they forget about like, I don't even know if they're necessarily shocked in the first get-go. They might be shocked. They might be like, not my problem. I'm moving along. I don't know necessarily if somebody who it's not them directly, whether they even have the appropriate reaction. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's something that's forgotten.
Yeah,
It's
but
not something that's
I
not
know,
lived
I
with.
understand you're trying to justify
That's
yourself,
all.
but I'm the thing that I'm trying to point out right now in this whole thing
Let's be
is
nice.
that the privilege to say, oh, I'm going to protect my child from like hearing about all this tragedy is a white person's privilege. Like that's not like, it's just, I'm not going to, my experience in my family is not the same as, Black families, but like when you live in Montana, being a Native man, like automatically you are in danger. And so we've taught my brothers, when a police officer pulls you over, which they're going to do, they pull you over for no reason. They're going to pull you over. You say, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And you just put your head down and you take your ticket and you don't say shit. Like that's what you do, because if you say anything, the chances of being a Native man in Montana is you're going to get killed by the police. And they're going to follow you wherever you are in open spaces, anywhere in public, even in your own home. I mean,
I
think
don't
about, so
disagree
you
with
have the
you. Yeah, I agree
luxury
with you.
to say, you have the luxury to say, not have that conversation with your children.
Don't hate
What I
on me,
thought was
Annette.
crazy about the videos that we watched already, especially, is none of those Black men called the police, even though they were being harassed.
And trying to go to Dick's Dine-In for a Postmate person. And I had the right of way to merge. I was in the right lane, and the two lanes were merging into one, and I was in front of her. Now, I merged. The street was ending. So I merged, and I guess that she felt like I needed to wait for her. I'm not sure. But she literally freaked out and like swung around me and got in front of me and slammed on her brakes and did a brake check. Almost slammed into the back of her car. And then she sticks her fingers out of the window and starts flicking me off and saying all this. Followed me. And then if you guys saw on I like jumped on Instagram. She then followed me and I got out of my car and I was like, why are you following me? And then when she saw that I had my phone and I was recording her, she threw her car in reverse and then took off. So then I saw her to follow. Karen, you're not going to sit there and flip me off. You flipped me off. You don't touch me. Do not touch me. You flipped me off. I don't care. Why did you flip me off? Karen. Ma'am, do not touch me. Did you not cuss me? Did you not? Did you flip me off? Why did I get flipped off? Ma'am, Karen, are you okay? Can
I
you
like
explain
how this
calmly?
woman is immediately called Karen.
I'm not attacking
Doesn't even
you.
know her real
Ma'am,
name.
you flipped me off. Guys, this is her license plate number. She lives here. This is her address. Karen, you flipped me off. You cut me off and flipped me off, and now you're playing the victim. Ma'am, would you like to calm down? Guys, she flipped me off. She literally flipped me off, and then she tried to come home. She's Karen. Karen, would you like to calm down and have a conversation? Why you? Am I attacking her? Ma'am, I'm not attacking you. You flipped me off, and you thought you could get away with it. You didn't think I would find you.
Do you hear that, white man?
She can apologize for calling me.
What did he say?
Okay, so apparently she called him the N-word and flipped her off. They're bleeping that part out.
My name is Carlos. Would you like to speak to me? This is what we.
And then the white man, her neighbor, is like screaming at him to leave her alone.
Ma'am, what about
This could be a comedy sketch. The way she just immediately starts like.
So you can go around the city and flip people off and cut me off. So you didn't flip me off.
White woman's tears.
Ma'am, you can. I'm trying to let you talk.
She's in the wrong, and so what does she do? She cries and says that the other person is being aggressive. They're hurting me.
You cannot sit. She literally flipped me off. She cut me off. I have it on camera. She flipped me off 3 blocks away, and then she slammed on her brakes. I have it on my Instagram. And then I got on my car. I was like, ma'am, why are you following me? Why? She literally followed me. So then I followed her back home. And I said, ma'am, why are you harassing me? Ma'am, listen to
White women's tears.
I'm going to say we're pretty lucky we live in a time where we can record all this stuff.
I'm going to walk away.
So now he has the witnesses.
I'm going to walk away. I know, but this is not fair for me. Now she's playing a victim when she victimized me. She victimized me.
You're not going to get anything out of this. We just have to walk away.
I know. What's your name, sir?
What is he saying?
I'm Carlos.
He's saying you're not going to get anything out of this. It's just time to walk away.
Okay.
You saw it.
She looked around and followed him back here. She started the whole thing.
So I'm going to de-escalate it, but I just wanted to be known that she started this, and now she's afraid that I came back around.
She's beyond control at this point.
So I'm going to just walk away from it.
Okay.
And now he's defending
that's my favorite one.
Now he's defending her hysteria. He's saying, oh, she's just like, let's just treat her nicely, even though she's in the wrong because she's so upset. Like, that's like the thing. Like, it's a thing. Like, the moment they are proven wrong, the moment a white woman is proven wrong by a person of color, they cry and they say, my feelings hurt. My feelings hurt.
Okay, I gotta say, I
They're
agree.
being
I agree with you
aggressive.
100%. I do think that's like a woman. I think that's an international women tactic. I mean, if I were a guy,
It is so.
No, it's not. We don't have the ability to cry.
Yeah, I don't
true.
cry on command.
Women,
No, we don't have the ability to cry. No,
we're 4 women sitting around talking with each other. But if you talk to men of like within the culture of like the same culture that you
3
are,
women and a non-binary person.
Men will say that women use their tears to get what they want. Same culture. I agree. Like everything that you say.
But I can't get what I
want
want with tears.
Yeah,
I can't get what I want with tears.
But with a native man, not with a white man. With a native man. Like
I
that's
just
all. That's just like one of the
if a
women's
black man-
tactics.
If a black man tries to tell me to do something I just ignore him because he probably isn't related to me. But I've never cried. I don't think I've ever cried.
No, you don't understand that. Like, the thing is like, do you know? I mean, okay, I'm in a space in my career where I am, and sometimes walk into a room where I'm the only person of color. Like, that's just straight up what it is. And there's just like so many spaces where if I cried, it wouldn't fucking matter. Like, nobody would care if I cried.
But if a woman cries in a professional setting, it completely delegitimizes her. Like, it's very difficult. Women are expected to behave like men in professional settings. So the minute you cry and not express yourself the way a man traditionally would, that takes away from the professionalism as a woman. I mean, that's a different topic of like how women are treated in a workspace, and can a woman be who,
I think it depends. So I'll give an example from my old job. I was working with a paralegal who, like, the way the business was set up was that like the paralegals were kind of like caught in between like the lawyers and the sales team to like help close contracts. And so sometimes the salespeople would like lie and, you know, do other like underhanded things to try to get the paralegals to like approve things they shouldn't have approved without passing it on to a lawyer, or, you know, just like other shenanigans that will hold deals up to try to get over. And so in this one particular instance, I think like the business, the salesperson like didn't submit like whatever like documents that were needed in order to like approve this contract. And so the paralegal sent an email, and so the salesperson's a white woman and the paralegal was a black woman, and essentially she sent an email being like, you know, just like very direct, but not like mean or anything, but like, you know, this hasn't happened because, you know, per the below, you know, such and such needs to do A, B, and C. For whatever reason, it was like taken in a negative way. And so she went, the white saleswoman went to her boss and saying, you know, that she felt like this black woman, you know, was, I'm trying to think of the exact language, but it was like, you know, like intimidating, or I don't know, like some, you know, basically like she made her feel uncomfortable, and like she was able to like, you know, send that message along basically to get her in trouble. And it's so funny because I ended up working with both of them and hearing both of their sides of the story. And so from the white woman's perspective, she felt like, you know, this black woman was, you know, I don't know, being rude to her. And I guess in the tone that she was asking for the documents or whatever. I had never perceived the woman to be rude, just like, you know, direct. Whereas I feel like in sales, or especially like in white culture, like especially white women, I think there's a pressure to always kind of speak, seem happy, smile, like not be direct, because if you are those things, then you'll be seen as a bitch. But
Yeah,
black people don't communicate like that. And it's harder for black women to like fall into that mold. And when we do, we're perceived as being like mean or aggressive, but it's like, you know, I'm not going to put smiley faces and exclamation marks after all of my sentences, so you know that I'm not like being mean. And so I totally understood that. But anyway, like the white woman, she perceived what she did as like getting this woman in trouble. So in her mind, she had like gotten like, you know, a mark put on this woman's record, when in reality that didn't happen. But it got to the point where, like, you know, further up in the business, the word got back to the paralegal's boss, like, well, these people, because they're in sales, like they pay our salary essentially. And so it created this weird, like this like sort of racial dynamic, because like all the paralegals were black women and like all the salespeople were white people. And so it's like, you know, you can't talk to people, you know, these people like deserve a certain level of respect that isn't, you know, equivalent to the respect that everyone is entitled to. So I've seen this play out in corporate spaces, like when people say things like, oh, you know, she's not a good fit, or using words like aggressive, or I don't know, other ways of like, I guess like putting black women in particular in their place. But whereas white women can get away with it more so, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I totally agree with that. I was just talking about like, it's hard for women to cry at work. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
can people hear me?
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I agree. I think women have this tightrope that they have to walk professionally. And I think black women have an additional tightrope to walk, because it's not just the being a woman versus a man in the workforce, it's also being a black woman. So I think that it's much harder to like navigate exactly what you say, how it's perceived, what it's done. And I think it's unfair standards. I think women are just held up to this, and black women have an additional hurdle. It's very hard.
I would love to make a man cry at work. That's just separate. Sorry, Seanna, what were you saying?
No, I mean, the problem isn't necessarily that like it's hard for women. It's that white women can weaponize their behavior by crying, in the sense of making their behavior okay. Like the video where that woman is just hysterically crying and everyone's rushing to her aid, and the white man is rushing to her aid and saying like, oh, don't point her out for being wrong. Like she was wrong in behavior because she feels bad. Like, stop, you're making her feel bad.
The
But hold on,
minute someone cries, it does. I totally agree with you.
No, but it's not the same. It's not the same if a white woman cries and if a person of color cries. Like, I'll tell you an example about my own personal life. Literally, this woman did something wrong. Like, she was wrong. Her behavior was inappropriate in the workplace. Everything she did was against company policy. I pointed it out. And instead of acknowledging that she was wrong, she said, I hurt her feelings. And immediately when she said, I hurt her feelings, all of a sudden it turned into, Seanna, you just have to, like, she's really torn up. You just have to be easy on her. And I said, but she was wrong. Like, by factually, she was wrong and she was going against company policy. Now what do? They said, oh, just treat her nicely. Treat her nicely. Let's get together and talk about it because she's really hurt. And I was like, is she hurt because of the fact that she was wrong? Because if she's hurt because she's wrong, then that's not my deal. It's not my responsibility to make her feel better about her own actions being wrong. So no.
I do think that when someone shows vulnerability and cries, it gets a different reaction from people. And I think, like, and that's just something, like, as a woman, like, I always felt like going through law school and working in the professional world, I always felt this like sense of, you need to be strong and you need to be stoic and you need to be professional and you can't show these emotions. Like, I really, I was very much bent that way. And through the years, I've learned that people who do cry and who do say, oh, my feelings are hurt, oh, I'm so sad, like, they draw on people's emotions. It's much like you've been, Brandee, in a classroom. If you've got a couple of kids in the class, and even if like the kid is in the wrong, it throws the first punch, but the other one is but they are the one who ends up crying. Like, whoever's crying and seems more sad gets the sympathy, and it takes a while to unravel the story. You go to the one who's crying first, and then you have to like unravel the story. So I'm just saying that, like, tears is a powerful weapon.
I think
totally agree.
But it's not the same.
Like, I agree with Seanna that different people's tears have different weights in different contexts. And I think that you can like sort of maliciously use tears. So it's like, how are you going to start a fight and then like cry when like, when it doesn't go your way? Like, it's because like these white women in all of these circumstances, they're not afraid. Like, they're the aggressors in a lot of these circumstances. And so for them to turn around and cry, it's like, that's not even, you're crying because you've been called out and you genuinely feel bad. It's like, you're crying because that, for your intended audience is going to get and especially, because you're like assailant or whatever, you're the person who's aggressing you is a Black man.
It's definitely an art of manipulation. I've worked with teenagers before, with teenage girls, and I'm always like amazed at like the mean girl who has the ability to do that. Like, who'll just like do the nasty thing and then turn around and cry, and everyone like goes to the mean girl, and you're like, wait, just back up a second. It's the tears that's like drawing, that's drawing the attention and pulling away. So no, it's a very, it's a powerful weapon.
But only certain people can wield it in certain contexts. Because I feel like I've definitely, like, as a Black woman, like, I'm not gonna say no one cares about a Black woman's tears, but it just doesn't hit the same. It doesn't launch 1,000 ships in the way that this like myth of like white womanhood, like that's been like built up over the centuries can and has. And so
I have a question. In like Black culture, like, is it considered appropriate or okay for women to, like, do you feel like as a Black girl growing up that you had to be like strong and not show your feelings or emotions, or were you raised to like show those emotions and fears and tears? Like, or were you taught to be like, you know what, you need to be strong and like hold it in and hold it together, and that's what it means to be? Because I think I don't know, I'm just wondering.
I think it's more, at least in my experience, it was more so a function of class than gender. I think growing up in the hood, in poverty, in like a tough area, like you had to be tough. You had to be tough, or else like people will like target you. And it's like a bunch of folks who don't have anything. The only thing, like for a lot of kids coming from like rough situations, their only source of entertainment or pride or whatever was being able to like fight and be tough. And so like growing up, like you just learn to like have this sort of tough exterior so people don't mess with you, because you could literally just be like minding your business, walking down the street and, or sitting on the bus. Oh my gosh. Like I remember the experiences, like I went to boarding school, so I didn't have this experience often, but like being on the bus around like school time, and it's like public transportation, and like with like tons of school kids, and like just seeing like fights break out over like nothing. Like literally nothing. It's like, what are you looking at? I'm not looking at anything. So you calling me a liar? Like, wow. And, not to say like, this, and I don't blame the kids. I think there's a lot of factors behind why that was a part of the culture. But like, I know like just the generation before me, like my mom's generation, or like, people were like cutting people's faces open with box cutters and like all kinds of just like crazy stuff. Just because of the times. And so I think I learned, I was also like a very emotional kid. So I always heard like, you gotta toughen up. Cause I would cry. I was a crybaby. Like, no, like you hurt my feelings, I'm gonna cry. If I get really, really angry, I'm gonna cry. Like, I just like, I'm a crier even to this day, but yeah.
I've never expressed an emotion in my life. That's a joke, but I think I also have felt similarly.
That's interesting, Kendra, because my understanding is that you grew up around a bunch of white folks. So did you feel like you had to have like a tough exterior to be like around in that environment?
Probably. It's probably like issues of race in addition to like family upbringing and stuff like that. But yeah, I didn't express my feelings like at school. It was like part of it was like, why do y'all need to know? Like, shut up, so yeah, that's me.
I was straight up told by my mom, don't show your feelings and, don't cry. That's a manipulation tactic. Be straight and strong and don't say anything. So like, I don't know.
That's fascinating.
And then I actually stay away from women who cry. I can't stand them. I'm like, oh, like I don't have a single friend who's a crier, because the minute
you got one.
But I didn't know it. I met your tough exterior. If I met you,
well, that's
for, like, but I have like definitely changed. Like as the years have gone on, I see like women more able to express their emotions and be true to who they are. I think like we're learning more in society that it's not good, and even men should express their emotions. But it's, I think people have difficulty dealing with others' feelings. So
yeah, no, it's
when
true.
When someone cries, everyone gets clouded.
Well, it just, I think that in particular, like white men can be like deputized behind like white women's tears in particular, in a way that I don't know that like black men feel that same like instinct to jump in. Like those white, like that white man was like ready. Yeah, like that white man
cries, a black man won't feel the need to cry. I wonder if it's like a cultural thing within the
I feel like
thing.
I think people just hate black women.
Basically.
Yeah, I feel like if like I feel like it's very rare to find a black dude that will like actually try to protect a black woman if she's crying, or like it might be really like situational, not like rare, but like it's like I would not expect I usually do not expect a random black man to be on my side. If I were like crying in the middle of the street, I don't think a random black guy would like stop and be like, "Are you okay, sis?" or whatever. I don't know.
Wow. 100% a white man would go to a white woman, I think.
Yeah, I was, and especially if
So
he's
interesting.
protecting her against a black man.
Yes, because there's that innate racism or like that,
Yeah. Whereas, I mean, I feel I've seen all kinds of instances of like, or heard of at least instances of like white women being with like extremely abusive white men and people knowing and people seeing like, but because, the threat is a white man, no one says anything. Like, you see this all the time with like abusive police officers, like who like beat the crap out of their wives. It's like they kill black men and beat the crap out of their wives. Like these things, like there's a lot of overlap. And no one says anything.
Though, right?
I
Like,
don't think you
that's
don't
more
get fired.
complicated. I think that's like why women stay in abusive relationships and why all the enablers around these, relationships let it happen. That's like a bigger systemic societal issue, right? Of why it's okay to treat women like that. Period.
Well, I don't know. Nobody gets to. Only white men can treat white women bad. Or only white men, have ownership over white women. And that's why, or at least that's like the thought process in like under white supremacy, which is why like back in the 30s or 20s, into our 30s, the famous like black heavyweight, I want to say, was he a heavyweight? Jack Johnson. He was a famous boxer back then, and he was known for like pretty much exclusively dating white women. I think he married a white woman, but the legend goes that whenever he had a fight, like the next day, like dozens of black men would get lynched. Like whenever he came to town.
Jesus fucking Christ.
But just like because of like it's like, oh, this like because white men were so infuriated that this black man had the audacity to be beating up white men and sleeping with white women. And so, the fact that like even just like black people, the thought of black people cheering this man on, the fact that like they went and killed black men to like vicariously make him pay, or like
there's another interesting thing when we're talking about abuse of by white men, like Native women. The Violence Against Women's Act by Congress was passed in about like 5 years or so. They made an amendment within it to provide tribes with the ability to prosecute non-members of the tribe on their reservation lands, because prior to that they could not go into like any type of dispute and protect the members from those that were anyway. So what I'm going to say is, so they changed the law in VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act, in order to allow the tribes to prosecute others. And the reason why that they did that was they did a study, and it said about at least a third of Native women reported that they experienced violence and rape and all of these other sexual assault and physical violence. And the majority of that violence was perpetuated by white men. And yet when this physical abuse was going on reservations, the tribe couldn't do anything because they couldn't stop them from coming on the land, but then they also couldn't prosecute them for abusing Native women. And so it's actually very systemic. You look at like women who go missing or are murdered, most of the time that's perpetuated by white men. And yet we don't care. For so long, we've just allowed it to happen without saying anything. So white men can do whatever they want.
Seanna, can you explain a little bit about like why it is, like what the jurisdictional stuff is with reservations and why it is that a white man can't be prosecuted if something's happening on a reservation?
Okay, so tribes are federally recognized. So the reservation, as they're known, are under the jurisdiction of the federal government. They are not under the jurisdiction of a state. So they can only answer to the federal government. However, the jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute are from the Federal Bureau of the FBI. So only the FBI can prosecute non-members of the tribe on reservation land. And only if the violence is happening off of reservation land can the states come in and lock these people up. So as long as, and then you can't prevent somebody from going onto reservation land. So like there's a freedom of movement, right? It's a civil right for us to be able to go anywhere within the United States. So all they can do is informally tell them to leave, but they have no powers in which to hold. And the FBI can do it, technically lock these people up, but the FBI is so they don't help as much because of the time constraints. Our federal government doesn't provide enough resources to actually have them to deal with anything less than murder. So the only things the FBI has time for is to prosecute murderers. So anything with violence against women don't occur, basically. Yeah.
That's
Little known
horrible.
fact. So the state can't come onto reservation lands and prosecute, and the tribes can't prosecute these individuals. However, VAWA said that now tribes can do it if they go through a certain process with the federal government, but then there's like a time limit of how long you can lock non-members up in the jails. And I think it's like 2 years last I checked. So if a man is beating his wife repeatedly and like say there's attempted murder, they can only be locked up for 2 years. Yeah, the Bill Burr's rant about basically Karens had such a negative backlash that white women were saying it was unfair. Well, so someone go into that because I'm not as familiar.
I could talk about it a little bit. So Bill
Yes.
Burr, I mean, stand-up comics in general are known for being misogynistic. I don't think Bill Burr is like the peak misogynistic, like white guy comic, but you know, he probably has he's his comedy career has been going for 30 years. He probably said something mean about women at many points. He famously, or like, I don't know if it's famously, but he is married to a black woman. And he had a Saturday Night Live sketch that was pretty much basically like, hey, like, you know, it's easy for white women to make fun of like white men for being white men, but he did not say it in these terms, but it was basically like white women are also complicit in white supremacy. So like white women should sit down next to me. I think he literally said like, sit now next to white men like me and get your talking to. That was kind of the summary of his monologue. And then there was a lot of like, it was interesting to see how the reactions between comedians was split. So like a lot of white women were like, this is misogynist, even though he's right, it's misogynistic because he's made fun of white women in the past. All the black women was like, this dude totally spoke to his black wife. All the black men were like, oh, he's like spitting bars. And then the white women were like, oh, he's spitting bars as well. But like everyone who was not a white man was like, you should probably listen to him more and not think of this monologue as just dunking on white women. So it's like an interesting summary of how people like kind of got it together. But yeah, it like caused an uproar. I feel like a lot of things that cause an uproar in comedy, and obviously not everything. There's been like, you know, if there's a comedian who's a Nazi, that should cause an uproar. But I feel like there was probably a lot of attention on it that it didn't need to be, because what he said wasn't really wild and it was correct. Like, yes, white women are complicit in white supremacy, and like we shouldn't single out white men uniquely as being like evil people in the world when white women are also complicit, right? So that's the summary.
One thing that really impresses me about comedians is that I think a lot of comedians are so bright and are able to like tap into a truth and present it in a comedic way. And I remember my reaction when I first heard that monologue. I was like, wow, like that's brilliant and so true. You can't just go after the men, because it's the women who raise the men. It's the women who are backing the men. It's the women who are walking next to the men. That yes, it's true that maybe white women also have like a certain oppression standard because women have, don't have status vis-a-vis men. But at the end of the day, when it comes to race, they're walking next to the white men and having these same racial attitudes. I just thought his monologue was brilliant. So this is why I love comedians. I just think that they're like a notch above the rest of us.
Brandee,
Thank you for that. Not all of us are, but that's very nice of you to think that we are somehow sophisticated. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to Not Another White Man's Podcast. As always, you can find this podcast wherever podcasts are found. That includes Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And I think that is it. But watch us all the time, listen to us all the time, and leave something in the comments. So what do you think about white women? Are you pro white woman, pro Karens, anti Karen? What are your thoughts? So thank you, and tune in next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.